So sometimes agents pick the wrong products. They may be good products, but perhaps the timing is wrong, or perhaps because they've been sold something as being the greatest thing ever. They come into it believing that person when they didn't realize that they were slanted or biased in that particular strategy's direction at the expense of other opportunities that may be a better fit. So for example, what we see commonly now, and again, I'm starting to sound old when I say this. I've been around 12 years, but I've seen a lot. We've been through coronavirus. I got started during the Great Recession. So I've seen kind of different phases of the insurance business. Not a lot has really changed, but probably the biggest thing that has changed in the past couple of years is the emphasis on the remote way of doing business. More agents now in 2023 are selling remotely than they were this time 3 years ago. Prior to COVID, I probably had less than 5% telesales agents. Now it's half, right? So there's been a big shift into the remote model of business. But what's happened is prior to COVID, it was like, hey, there's just one way to do this business. You just buy leads and run appointments in person. And it was simplified. But now with more options, and then people promoting those options and elevating them to the status of being the best in the world, in their opinion, it provides different perspectives. And the more perspectives and the more ideas that are out there, it does get confusing as a new agent. What is really the best? Is it face-to-face? Is it telesales? Is it final expense? Is it Medicare? Is it annuities? And too many options, I call this the illusion of choice, is confusing. And confused people don't buy, confused people don't sell, confused people just stay put because that's the safest strategy to follow. So when we're looking at selling final expense or life insurance or really any product, one thing you need to take time on in order to avoid failure is to make sure that the strategy you're pursuing is the best fit for you and your personality. A couple of tips here on strategy. Number one, I recommend picking one strategy only. If you've been around long enough, you'll hear me say time and time again, you can't serve two masters. You can't do final expense and Medicare and annuities all at once, all together, right as you get started. Can you? Is there somebody who is? Probably. There's always exceptions to rules, but that's why they're exceptions. I talked to an agent last night who said, Dave, I've had all the experience in Medicare. Should I overvalue my experience and kind of allow that to give me confidence as I transition to final expense? Or should I undervalue that experience, but potentially be more, I don't know what the word was, sensitive, and more, I can't come up with the word, but, worried about my performance. And I thought about it and I said, hey, look, you really need to be you need to underestimate your capabilities, because if you underestimate your capabilities and you come into this business, then you don't take things for granted. And a lot of people end up failing out of the business because they took things for granted. They thought it would be easier than it was. They didn't properly prepare for battle, right? And so likewise, one of those things that you have to do if you're going to look into this, which is the right perspective, is consider yourself a below average agent. Not bad, but not great. What would you do if that was the case? Well, one of the things I would do is just focus on one product. And the truth is anybody who's done this business, within the first week, you realize what I've been learning is a lot more complicated in execution than it is just looking at third party from the outside in. Does that make sense? So part of this strategy stuff is not just figuring out which is best for you, but only working on that one which is best. One example of that is the difference if you're looking at final expense, let's say, and I would even argue this is true for life insurance, is figuring out, are you a telesales person or a face-to-face person? Okay. I don't believe in the hybrid method. I think you need to focus on one strategy only. Because either strategy is unique, it's different. Sure, it's the same people, generally speaking, but how you handle things in telesales is a little different than how you handle it in face-to-face. And it's worthy of your entire focus as opposed to being spread out and disseminating your focus, which tends to lead more often to failure. But you need to figure out where you belong and where your strengths lie. A real quick acid test to this is, how do you feel naturally, as far as are you more geared up to be a telesales person or more of a face-to-face person? Do you like talking to people over the phone? Are you a person that doesn't mind picking up the phone and dialing 8, 9, 10 hours a day? Or are you a person that just prefers to see people in person, to deal with people in person? You like handshake, sitting down in people's home, making eye contact, and you just feel more energetic and in a good position. Those questions that you answer are going to lead you in one pathway or the other. Because as some others will say in the business, which isn't true, they'll say things like telesales is the only model that makes sense, or telesales is broken, or face-to-face is old. It doesn't work anymore. Nobody wants to come to your home, or face-to-face is the only proven model there is. Both models of selling work, but they don't work for all people. And what I've discovered is most people have one bias towards one way or the other, meaning they're strong in telesales and weak in face-to-face, or vice versa. They're strong in face-to-face and weak in telesales. And you should pick what is best suited for that personality type that you have after you kind of do some contemplation and see where you fit. I will say this before I kind of bring up the product types, which is another big mistake agents make, which contribute a lot to their failure, is you also have to, if you're half pregnant about the deal, if you just like both, but you see the drawbacks and you're just really neutral, then I would just say do face-to-face. The truth of the matter is, in the business of final expense, and I would imagine the same for life insurance, the success rate is higher selling in person than it is over the phone. For example, at our latest reading, our new telesales agents had a success rate of 80% after going through training, buying leads, and selling in their first week. If they make a sale in the first week, we consider that a success. That's the best indicator long-term that somebody has the sticking power to have success. 80% of telesales agents in February, when we last looked at the number, we need to do our March numbers here, had success. Face-to-face agents had 95% success. So there is a difference there. And I think outside of the mentorship program and the one-on-ones that we do, it's probably a lot lower across the board. And then telesales is even lower. It's just more difficult to sell over the phone. That's the way it is. So if you're half pregnant and you're not totally convicted you should be on the phone, it's likely that doing face-to-face, your odds are going to be higher to have success. And the sales process as a whole is more forgiving to the average agent than telesales is. The other thing you need to be concerned about too is the product that you sell. This is really, really important. And I actually have shifted my recruiting strategy because I had kind of a realization here over the last couple of months that as I'm talking about things like this, like, hey, you got to pick the right product, that I'm doing a disservice in my recruiting strategy by offering, in many cases, products that are not appropriate for the agent at the time in their career. There are a lot of agents who may get great support training that have the capability to be successful, they have the work ethic, et cetera, but they pick a product that just doesn't pay very well. And they're in a position to where, because the product is what we would call a residual or passive income based product, they just don't make a lot of upfront money. And they don't account for the cost of doing business, buying leads. And that contributes to a very low return on investment, a low net income. And they can't keep up their bills. And while they were having success and they were making sales, the income flow from the sale of that product couldn't keep pace with their bills. Therefore, they have to get out of the business. Cash is king, y'all, in this business. And this is a really important concept. Cash is king, and cash flow is even more king. If you don't have money on hand, if you don't have money inflowing from your sales because you're picking the wrong product to sell, because it's a low first-year commission but good residual product, even if you do everything right, you're going to struggle. So what products fill the bill, fit that bill? Medicare, ACA, and in some cases, PNC. I do not recommend brand new agents to the business sell those kind of residual income-based products to start with. Here's why. And this is why we don't recruit agents to ACA or Medicare directly anymore. You have to be successful in final expense for 6 months first before we allow the agent to start to cross-sell other products because of the cash flow concerns. But the problem is again, these agents will pick these products up, not have the cash flow necessary, and really also the good fundamentals of how to sell, which you learn very well when you sell life insurance or final expense, but not necessarily in a technical product like health insurance or Medicare. And what we've seen time and again is it's just a very big burden. If you don't have the money to pay, 95% of agents need to make money yesterday. A final expense or a life insurance product to focus on is going to be the best answer to generating higher cash flow up front, because the way that works is this life insurance and final expense are front-loaded commission products. You make the bulk of the commission up front, whereas with health insurance and Medicare, you make it over time. And when you've got to worry about your bills, you got to worry about expenses on leads. It's just not good to start with. It's good to get into later. Case in point, I can think of 2 agents here. I'll rename nameless. I don't want to, reveal them, that were financially in good shape, made good money selling final expense, and then transitioned to Medicare. Both are very good producers. They're writing over 300, sometimes even more, Medicare Advantage policies every single year. The first one, 3 of them actually, 2. The first one got started, did too much Medicare to start with, was a great final expense agent. And he's like out of money to buy leads during annual election period selling Medicare exclusively, because all that pay on Medicare didn't hit till January, February the following year. So he ran into a cash flow crunch. And then my other agent, who he writes 500 to 700 a year, was out of money his first annual election period to buy leads because of the time it took to get paid. And the first year is very stressful as he was getting onboarded because he didn't have the residual income coming in. So that first year is very financially stressful. And these are agents that were writing 300 applications in final expense a year or more. So my point in saying this is, if these agents that were making good money and conceivably keeping good money on hand were struggling this much, what if you're just average? What if you're writing a Medicare ACA plan and you're just an average agent and your cost of doing business is higher and your close rates are lower? Do you think you're going to suffer more? I would say so. So I think this is case in point, which is why Medicare and residual-based products come later in your career, not in the beginning. And part of the reason why we backed away from just recruiting ACA only or Medicare only agents until the agent has built up a bankroll through the sale of final expense for 6+ months. So be careful with what product you choose. That's what I'm saying. You want to make sure the economics of the product allow for a good upfront first year commission. And if you're not sure, talk to your upline about it. If you're not looking to join DeFord Insurance Group, which should, but if you're looking to join somewhere else, ask them about it. Like, how does the money work? How do we account for advance commissions? The cost of doing business? What can I reasonably expect in a best case and worst case scenario? Just a reminder, we at DeFord Insurance Group recruit telesales and face-to-face final expense agents who value one-on-one mentorship, high-quality leads, high commissions, and more. Check out daviddeford.com to learn more.